الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي اللهم آمين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I welcome you to lesson 4 of Arabic Made Easy. And so inshallah today we'll be looking at حروف الجر. So and before I move on, I'd like to explain first what are the Arabic vowels. Just like in English we have vowels, we have A, E, I, O, and U. And in Arabic also we have vowels too, and we have just three main vowels in Arabic language. We have the fatha. An example of that is in this words here, aina. Aina here has fatha, alif hamza has fatha, nun also has the fatha. And we also have kasra. Kasra, like we have in al-maktabi, you can see kasra is written on the, fatha is written on top. And we have dhamma, dhamma, like the word al-baytu, it has dhamma on top of it. And the reason why I'm explaining this is because حرف الجر or حروف الجر has a lot to do with the haraka kasra, the vowel kasra. Okay, حروف الجر has a lot to do with the vowel kasra. And then in Arabic language we have verbs, we have names, and we have particles. Okay, that's just all what the grammar is split it into. We just have names, verbs, and particles. So it's either something is a name, or it's a verb, or it's a particle. For example, حروف الجر are all particles, and Al-Bayt and Al-Maktab, Al-Sarir and Al-Masjid, these are all names. And we also have verbs. And inshallah we'll be seeing some of the verbs in this chapter also. So now, what are huruf al-jar? Huruf al-jar are prepositions actually. They mean, so for example, fi means inside or in. That's mean of fi, ala means on. And so these are just prepositions, but they are called huruf al-jar because of a particular role that they play, or a particular function or effect they have on a name. And that effect is whenever a name is preceded by huruf al-jar, that name or that noun must have a kasra at the last letter. For example, let's take a look at the examples we're given first. We have al-baytu, and al-baytu is in ma'rifa, which means it has an alif and lam. We've talked about that in previous lesson. And when we add, or when it's preceded by a preposition like inside or in, then the last letter of that word, which is al-bayt, has to have a kasra. So it becomes fil bayti. Okay? Fil bayti. Fil bayti. Okay. And so this is basically all what huruf al-jar does. They put, or they give the name that they're being preceded by, they give it a kasra at the last letter. So, and one more thing is that these prepositions actually have more than one meaning. For example, fi can have more than one meaning, but here it is going to be interpreted as in. It can also have other meanings too. It can mean because also. Fi can mean because of such and such. Ala, ala means on, and ala can also have other meanings. Okay, but those are in other further lessons. But because these are just basics, I'll be telling you the basic meaning of all these prepositions. So fi means in, ala means on. We have al masjidu, and when you have huruful jar, you will have it as fil masjidi. Okay, then we have as-sariru, which means the bed, and when you add huruful jar to it, it becomes ala sariri. Okay, ala sariri, on the bed. So now let's take a look at this ba here. Now in this ba, we'll be looking at the word aina, and also masculine pronouns. All right, we're looking at aina and masculine pronouns. So we have aina Muhammad. Where is Muhammad? So if you are willing to ask questions like where is something, or where is a thing, particular thing you're looking for, you use the word aina. So and you say aina Muhammadun, where is Muhammad? Huwa fil ghurfa, he is in the room. And when you say wa aina Yasir, where is Yasir? Huwa fil hammam, he is in the toilet. So al hammam means the toilet, and al ghurfa means the room. And we say wa aina Aminatu, and where is Amina? Hiya fil matbakhi, she is in the kitchen. Aina al kitabu, where is the book? Wa ala al maktabi, it is on the desk. Wa aina sa'atu, where is the wristwatch? Hiya ala sariri, it is on the bed. So if you take note of these names, you can see that we have both masculine and feminine names. We also have names of people and names of objects in this column here. We have Muhammad, which is a masculine name. Yasir is also a masculine name. Amina is another masculine name. Al-Kitab is the name of an object, but it is masculine in nature. As-Sa'a is the name of another object, but it is feminine in nature. And now, how do we identify masculine names, or how do we tell the difference between masculine and feminine names of objects? Okay, because it's easy to tell the difference between names of people, but we can tell if it's masculine or feminine when we're referring to people. But when we're referring to objects, how do we know the difference? Now, one major difference or differentiating factor is when the name has a ta marbuta at the end. Like, for example, this word here has a ta marbuta, and so whenever names have or most names that have ta marbuta are usually feminine in nature, both names of people and names of objects. For example, Amina is a female name and it has a ta marbuta at the end. And if you're just hearing ta marbuta for the first time, ta marbuta means a ta that has been rounded up. For example, this is a ta here. It's the same as this ta, but the difference is this ta has been rolled up like a ball. You can see it. It's like a ball here, but it is opened here. So, okay, this is a ta al-maftuh. This ta is opened. You remember in the previous lesson we talked about maftuh, when something is opened. So this is a ta that is open. Okay, a ta maftuh. And this is a ta marbut, a ta that is closed. Okay, a ta marbut, ta that is closed or rolled up. So this is the major difference that tells us or differentiates masculine names from feminine names. And also their pronouns will be different. You know, like in most languages, pronouns used for masculine and feminine are always different. You know, for example, in English, the pronoun for masculine is he and the pronoun for feminine is she. And so in Arabic language also we have the difference. When you're referring to a masculine name, you have huwa. When you're referring to a feminine name, like Amina, you say hiya. So huwa is for the masculine and hiya is for the feminine. Also, names of objects have to take different pronouns also. For example, a masculine name, which is an object, takes huwa, and an object name, which is feminine nature, has to take the pronoun hiya. So وأين الساعة هي على سريري. And take note of the huruf al-jar. They're all here, and which means the name after it must have a kasra at the last letter. Alright, now let's go into the test questions real quick. أجبن الأسئلة الآتية. So you've been asked to answer all of these questions. So all you just have to do here is think of the appropriate way of answering the questions, the appropriate answers. For example, you're being asked أين الكتاب, where is the book? You can just say the book is on the table, for example. Al-kitabu ala al-maktabi. When you say Aina Muhammad, where is Muhammad? You can say Muhammad is in the room. Huwa fil ghurfati. Okay? Then you can do all of that for the rest of the test questions. And we have Iqra waqtu ba'd dabti awakhir al-kalimat. Now, one important lesson here. So here you're being told to apply what you've learned about huruf al-jar, and which is whenever you find huruf al-jar before a name, you have to add kasra at the last letter. So for example, in madrasatu, it doesn't have a huruf al-jar preceding it, so it's just going to have a dhamma. So there's one common rule, and that is most names will always have a dhamma at their last letter when there's nothing affecting that name. For example, when a name stands alone like this al-madrasa, it will have a dhamma at the last letter. So that's just the origin of it, of the vowels that are meant to have in the last letter. And one thing I didn't mention is that in Arabic language, or should I say in Nahu, which is declension in Arabic language, in declension actually, if you're hearing it for the first time, means how you change the last vowels. I mean, how you change the vowels of the last letters of a word, of words. So for example, al-madrasatu. So declension has to do, or declension is concerned with the vowel that the ta marbuta is going to have in al-madrasa, because ta is the last letter. All right, so that's what declension is more concerned about. It's concerned about the vowels of the last letters. Okay, and that is popularly known as nahu. That is nahu in Arabic language. So that is what declension is all about, and that is what most of declensions is talking about. So how do you change the vowels of the last letter into another vowel? So for example, initially you have al-madrasatu. That is because it is just staying on its own, and that is because dhamma is the basic haraka for every name. It's just going to have dhamma at the end. But when you have it preceded by harf al-jar or huruf al-jar, it has to change to a kasra. So now this is part of declension. This preposition here has changed the vowel of the last letter. Okay, forget about the vowels of the middle letters and the beginning letters. Those do not go through any changes, but the vowels of the last letters are the ones that go through changes. For example, fil madrasati, the ta marbuta there has to have a kasra. Fil bayti, the ta, open the ta, there has to have a kasra also. But we have al baytu, There is no حروف الجر preceding it. There's nothing affecting it. It's just standing on its own. So that means it's going to have a dhamma on top. So الغرفة الحمام في المطبخ. Okay, في المطبخ. The rule of حروف الجر. So now you're being told اقرأ واكتب. Read and write. Now, the reason why you're told to read and write this is so you can remember the rules of حروف الجر and you can remember how to use them. So, for example, you have الطالب في الجامعة. The student is in the university. الرجل في المسجد. The man is in the masjid. So you can read the rest yourself and Allah will make it easy. So we have in this page here, now we're being told, or what this page is trying to explain to us is telling us we have masculine names and feminine names. And if you take a look at all of these names here, they're all masculine. Muhammad, Khalid, Hamid, Yasir, Ammar, Saeed, Ali. And if you take a look at this other column here, you have all of these names are feminine names. Amina, Zainab, Fatima, Maryam. Now, take note, I told you that most feminine names have ta marbuta at the end, which is this rounded up ta. You can see most of the names here have a ta marbuta, but not all of them. For example, Maryam does not have a ta marbuta, and that doesn't mean it's a masculine name. It's a feminine name. Zainab also does not have the ta marbuta. It's also a feminine name. And what about these names here, like Muhammad, Khalid, Hamid? All of these names do not have ta marbuta, but that does not mean masculine names can't have ta marbuta. For example, Sahaba, radiallahu anhu, his name is Hamza. Hamza ends with a ta marbuta, and yet it is a masculine name. So, but the majority of feminine names will have a ta marbuta, and the majority of masculine names won't have a ta marbuta. Now, there's another difference I'd like to share with you in this column here and this column here, and that is the tenween. Okay, if you take note, the masculine names have tenween, but the feminine names do not have tenween, and that is just for one reason. For example, Muhammadun, Khalidun, Hamidun, Yasirun, Ammarun, they all have the tenween in all of these names, but all of the feminine names do not have tenween. And now this is the reason why. Because these masculine names you have here, all of these names here have roots in the Arabic language. So with whatever name that has its origin from the Arabic language, that name should have a tenween. Okay, as long as that name has its origin from Arabic language. For example, let me tell you what I mean by names having their origin in Arabic language. For example, Muhammad comes from a verb. Actually, Muhammad comes from a verb which is ahmada, to praise someone. So Muhammad means someone who is praised. Muhammad comes from the word hamada. Yes, Muhammad comes from the word hamada, not ahmada. Hamada, which is to praise. And when you say Muhammad, which means someone who is being praised. All right, so when you say names have origin in Arabic language, it means those names came from verbs initially. All right, those names came from verbs like miftah, when we talked about it in the last lesson. Miftah comes from the verb fataha. So, and you see, when we extracted miftah from fataha, miftah is eligible to having a tenween. Miftahun. All right, so goes all these names. They all have their origins from the Arabic language, which means they all came from some verbs, one verb or the other. But names here that have ta marbuta, some of them actually came from Arabic origin. They all have Arabic origin. But why is it that they're not having tenween? The number one reason why the female names are not having a tenween is because, number one, once you end a name or a word with ta marbuta, that ta marbuta cannot have a tenween. All right, the ta marbuta cannot have a tenween. All right, like Aminatu, you can say Aminatun. All right, Aisha too, you can say Aisha tun. There's nothing like that. So, and what about these names, Zainab and Maryam? Why can't they have ta marbuta? That is because these names do not have origins in Arabic language. Maryam and Zainab are words or names that don't have an origin in Arabic language. They are not from any verbs in Arabic language. Okay, let's go on. We have اقرأ واكتب مع ضبط أواخر الكلمات. So now all you have to do is read and write. Now you take note. They're basically, and most of the times when they ask you to read and write, there's this repetition of this particular question that says اقرأ واكتب مع ضبط أواخر الكلمات. Why are they always saying put something at the end of the letters? That is the meaning of this actually. مع ضبط أواخر الكلمات. And that is because they're trying to teach you a little bit of declension here. So for example, Hamidu is going to, or Hamidun is going to have a tenween, but Zainabu would have a dhamma, not a tenween. Aminatu would have a dhamma, not a tenween, not a dhammatan. And Ammar would have a dhamma and not a dhammatan. Okay, oh sorry, Ammarun is going to have a dhammatan here because it's here also. Ammarun is the masculine name. Sa'idun will have a dhammatan also. So just take note, feminine names ending with ta marbuta, do not end with tenwins. Okay, and also feminine names that don't have origin in Arabic language also cannot end with tenwin. So goes for masculine names. Masculine names that don't have an origin in Arabic language, for example, your native names that you might be bearing, cannot have a tenwin. All right, so that is all for that. Now let's go on to ba. So we're going to deal with some other huruf al-jar, which is min al-bayti and ila al-masjidi. So I'll be stopping the lesson here, inshallah, for the sake of ease and so you can understand. I've said a lot in this record, so inshallah I'll do another one and I'll be explaining this page particularly, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullah.